From the studio that brought us such classics as Evangelion, Fooly, Cooly, Gurren Lagann comes... Panty and Stocking with Garterbelt. Now the series follows a duo of angels known as the Anarchy Sisters named Panty and Stocking, who are trying to buy their way back into heaven by using heaven coins that they get from killing monsters. How do they kill the monsters? By using their underwear as a weapon. That's right, Panty uses her own panties as a gun, and then Stocking can turn her stockings into a sword. And they do this with the help of some other characters like their priest caretaker named Garterbelt. That's pretty much the basic gist of the show. Now let's take a look at the characters. Panty herself is a loud, foul-mouthed, sex-obsessed, careless girl who cares nothing about anything else except getting laid and sleeping with 1,000 men before she gets back to heaven. While Stocking herself is a more brooding, sugar-addicted goth girl who has a fetish for bondage and usually is the more serious and intelligent of the pair, but that's really not saying much because Panty is a little bit more on the ditzy side. It's like watching the X-rated version of Hi Hi Puffy Amiyumi meets Ghostbusters. That's probably the most apt description I can give for this show. They also have a little dog named Chuck, which I am not kidding you folks, looks exactly like Gur from Invader Zim. I'm serious. You put these two side by side, they look exactly the same. In fact, here's a picture of them right now, both of them side by side. Let's talk about some of the upsides of the show. For one thing, the show knows exactly what it wants to be, and it doesn't try to fool yourself into thinking that it's trying to be something that it's not. It knows it's silly. It knows it's over the top. It's ridiculous. It's sexy. It's badass. It is completely off the wall, bat crap crazy. And you know what? That's fine. It's like a roller coaster. It has ups and its downs, and it just goes completely nuts. And you know what? You can have a good time watching this show if you know exactly what you're getting yourself into just by the title. Seriously, if you don't know what you're getting yourself into by the title, what are you doing even watching the show? Now, with that being said, I can perfectly understand just from the sheer setup that this is not meant to be taken seriously, and I can understand people who do not like this kind of a show and couldn't like this type of humor and this style. That's okay. Personally, I did enjoy this kind of setup because I was able to just kick back and enjoy the insanity that ensued. And most people can, and some people can't do that. That's okay. That's not a criticism to you to them as a person. That's just a taste of my own. That's just a taste purely my own as someone who was catering to me, and it was just something that I personally found enjoyable. Another thing that this show has going for it is the soundtrack. It is awesome. I'm not kidding you. I could easily see this being played at a party or a rave or something of that nature, especially the song Fly Away, which is probably coupled with the sexiest transformation I've ever seen in an anime. Trust me, people, it gives Sailor Moon a run for its money. I am not kidding you. Seriously, look it up at some point. You trust me, you are in for a feast for the eyes. Another thing that works for the show in his favor is, in my personal opinion, Panty and Stocking themselves as characters. Yes, they are rude. Yes, they are foul-mouthed. Yes, they probably shout more obscenities than any other character I've seen ever. But that being said, they're the heart of the show. They're the most fun to watch. Every time they're on screen, the whole thing is focused on them. The show revolves around them. They are the essence of the show, and it makes it much more fun. Now with those positives said, let's get to the downsides of the show. For one thing, the art style. The art style themselves is not the best animation in the world, but for this show, it doesn't have to be. However, there are certain points in the show which the art style shifts to different types of style, which in itself is not a bad thing. It shows you how these characters could look in other formats, which is actually fairly interesting. But there are certain problems with that. Whenever the tone shifts so dramatically and it focuses on a different style, you feel like you're watching a completely different show. For example, one episode I watched called Vomiting Point, in which the art style was so dramatically different from the rest of the show and the rest of the episodes, as I said, preceding that it just felt like I was watching a completely different anime. I can't name what it looked like, because you would have to see it for yourself in order to understand it. But that being said, when it focused on that style and it clashed so much with the episodes, it just felt very distracting. It just didn't mesh well. It just wasn't very cohesive. Another problem I have with this show is the fact whenever Panty and Stocking are not the main focus of the episode, that becomes a little bit of a problem. It loses a lot of its appeal factor, a lot of its traction, and the main side characters are actually not that very interesting. Garterbelt is okay. Chuck is a little bit annoying. Even Chuck gets his own episode, but that in itself is not very interesting. Garterbelt has its own episode where you kind of learn a little bit more of its backstory. That in itself is okay, but whenever it shifts in tone and not focuses on Panty and Stocking or something directly related to them that affects them, it really loses a lot of its attention and traction and appeal to it. At least for me. It may not for you. It may not be for some other viewers of the show, and that's fine. But for me, whenever it didn't focus on Panty and Stocking, I really lost a lot of attention. It just made me wonder, why should I care about these people? It doesn't matter. They don't interest me. Only Panty and Stocking are the ones that main interest. They're the heart of the show. Now, this is more of a subjective point. It just depends on what you find appealing, and that's the humor. Let me make this perfectly clear. The humor in this show is very juvenile. There's a lot of swearing, there's a lot of bad puns, a lot of crap jokes, a lot of innuendos, and a lot of sex jokes. A lot of that, by the bucket filled. And that is a very specific set of humor that you can find that one could find appealing. Now, I don't blame anyone for being able to not like this kind of humor. Like humor is supposed to be, humor is subjective. It just depends on your personal taste, what you find funny. I myself have a very dry sense of humor. I know this. However, my sense of humor can range from anything from, say, Monty Python, the Holy Grail, to Caddyshack, to something as completely juvenile and off the wall like Jackass. If you don't like the humor of this show, that's okay. That's not a detriment to you as a person. That just means you don't personally like this type of humor. So for Panty and Stocking, I have to give it 2 ratings. One for a normal person who is not usually a fan of this, who could actually maybe not enjoy this as much, but I would still see if they are interested in, might find it funny. So for Panty and Stocking, for a normal person, I would say watch it at your own risk. However, for a person who can understand what this show is, what it's going for, what it does well, how it works, and the style that it serves, I would say it's worth watching, but it's not perfect. So everybody, that is my review of Panty and Stocking with Garterbelt. I hope you enjoyed this review and found it informative and interesting, and I hope to get my next video game review done soon with Persona 4 Arena and review the Born Legacy this weekend. Until next time, everybody, I'm Perry the One-Armed Legend. You name it, I can scream it.